They say love is beautiful. They say needing someone makes us human. They lie. Emotional dependence isn't intimacy. It's voluntary enslavement. Not a bond, a collar. And the worst part? You asked for it. No one forced you to crave their attention. No one dragged you into obsession. You gave them that power. Freely. Pathetically. Because your soul was too weak to bear its own weight. You called it connection, but Jung would call it what it is, a regression into shadow, a surrender of the self in exchange for comfort. Every time you wait for their reply like a drug, every time you mold your identity to keep them from leaving, every time you say, I can't live without you, you are not in love, you are in submission. Worse, you're addicted to it, because dependence feels warm, powerless feels safe. It absolves you of responsibility, and secretly, you like that. You don't want to grow, you want to be owned. So here's the forbidden truth. The emotionally dependent don't want freedom. They want to be conquered. Still think this is about love? It's about worship, weakness, and willful self-erasure. Let's be honest. No one teaches you how to be alone, only how to be wanted. From childhood, you're trained to attach, please the parent, impress the teacher, win the lover. And the more praise you receive, the more invisible your real self becomes. Carl Jung warned us, what you reject within, you project without. So, what happens when you reject your loneliness? You don't dissolve it. You disguise it as love. You don't connect, you cling. This is emotional dependence. The silent epidemic where identity collapses the moment someone loves you back. Where I miss you really means without you, I don't exist. Where you complete me is a coded confession. I have no self. You are my substitute. But the modern world sells this as romance. It labels trauma bonding as passion, anxious attachment as depth, abandonment issues as proof of how deeply you feel. You think it's intimacy. It's submission. Jung believed the dependent personality wasn't just fragile, it was dangerous. Because dependency breeds resentment. Resentment breeds control. And eventually, the loving partner becomes a hostage taker in disguise. Why does this matter? Because if you don't confront this now, you'll spend your life chasing people who treat your neediness like a leash. You'll call it fate. You'll call it heartbreak. You'll call it everything, except what it really is. Self-abandonment, masquerading as devotion. Understanding this doesn't just change your relationships. It shatters the lie your whole emotional life has been built on. The lie that needing someone is noble. It's not. It's psychological surrender. And most people, especially the ones who say they want love, are already on their knees. Her name was Lila. Smart, charismatic, the kind of woman who said all the right things about self-love and boundaries, until she met him. He was distant, mysterious, slightly cruel in the way that made her stomach tighten instead of turn. He didn't text back fast, didn't ask her questions, didn't need her. And that's exactly why she fell. In the beginning, she swore she was in control. Just fun, she said, no expectations. But slowly, something in her rewired. She waited by the phone, checked if he saw her Instagram story. Imagined conversations where he'd say he loved her, and she'd pretend not to care. By month 2, she wasn't sleeping. By month 3, she deleted her dating apps, even though he hadn't. By month 4, she cried when he didn't want to spend the night. He never hit her, never insulted her, never raised his voice. All he did was remain unmoved. That was the knife. Because to someone emotionally dependent, indifference is worse than cruelty. She spiraled, bought books on attachment theory, talked about triggers and childhood trauma. But none of it changed the fact that she needed him. Not for love, for validation. He had become her mirror. And every time he looked away, she ceased to exist. This wasn't love. This was a soul on life support, clinging to a man who never offered oxygen. And the sickest part? She called it romantic. Now pause. Ask yourself, Why do people like Lila, smart, self-aware, even healed, fall into this pattern? Because emotional dependence doesn't come from stupidity. It comes from self-fragmentation. The moment you place your sense of worth inside another human, you're already in bondage. And the more distant they are, the more powerful they become. They don't need to manipulate. They don't even need to try. Your own psyche enslaves you on their behalf. Jung called this the anima projection, where you cast your inner longing onto someone else and confuse it for destiny. But Nietzsche said it better. You call it love, I call it the will to be weak. Because here's the truth you don't want to hear. You don't crave connection. You crave dependency disguised as connection. You want someone to anchor your identity, so you never have to face the chaos of your own inner world. You want their attention not because it nourishes you, but because it distracts you from the void. You'd rather be possessed than be alone. You'd rather suffer in someone's orbit than float freely in the unknown. And worst of all, you turn this masochism into a moral virtue. You say, I just love deeply. No, you collapse easily. You say, I have a big heart. No, you have a fragile ego. You say, I'm just loyal. No, you're afraid to lose your reflection. So let's be brutally honest. Most modern relationships are not built on mutual respect or shared purpose. They're built on one person's hunger for validation and the other's indifference to it. One kneels, one looks away, and both call it love. What Lila experienced is not rare. It's the new normal. It's the fantasy sold by movies, by TikTok therapists, by couples' Instagram accounts, where craving is mistaken for caring and suffering is mislabeled as soul connection. But the moment you need someone to feel whole, you are already shattered. The moment you say, I can't lose them, you have already lost yourself. That is not love. It is psychological treason. And most of you, whether you admit it or not, are committing it every single day. She couldn't, not because he was good to her, but because without his indifference, she had no identity. Every time she tried to walk away, the silence screamed louder than his presence ever did. She missed the anxiety. She missed the waiting. She missed the tiny dopamine hits when he finally replied. So she stayed, and slowly, her world shrank to his unpredictability. She stopped seeing friends, stopped going to the gym, started curating every word she said to avoid pushing him away. It wasn't a relationship anymore. It was a psychic occupation, a war she lost every day just to feel seen for 5 minutes a week. One night, she asked him, "Do you even love me?" He didn't lie. He just looked at her and said, "I like you better when you're quiet." She nodded and said nothing. Now tell me, who's the villain here? Him? Cold? Detached? Emotionally unavailable? Or her? For surrendering her autonomy and calling it love? This is the brutal paradox. In emotional dependence, the one who suffers most is often the one who secretly permits it. Because the dependent doesn't want truth. They want permission to stay weak. They don't want a partner. They want a savior, a mirror, a master. This is what Jung meant when he warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And modern society, it encourages this pathology and markets it as romance. Think about the lies we've normalized. He's just emotionally unavailable. No, he's indifferent, and you're addicted to earning scraps. She has abandonment issues. No, she's weaponizing her past as a reason to never take responsibility for her cravings. They just have a trauma bond. No, they've mistaken mutual emotional blackmail for intimacy. We diagnose ourselves with disorders so we can excuse our dependencies. We wrap toxic patterns in psychobabble so we don't have to call it what it island. Willful submission. What you call heartbreak, Nietzsche would call weakness. What you call intensity, Jung would call projection. And what society calls love is often just two people feeding each other's need to escape themselves. But here's the worst part. You don't want this to end. Because if it ends, you're left with your own reflection. No more excuses. No more emotional roller coaster to distract from the boredom of your unexamined life. No more trauma to romanticize. You'd rather be in pain with someone than in peace with yourself. So you stay. And every time they hurt you, you rebrand it as growth. You post cryptic quotes about healing. You tell your friends you're working through it. And deep down, you hope the pain continues. Because if it stops, what will you become? Alone. And that, being alone, is the one reality your ego cannot survive. Because it would mean facing the abyss you've covered with years of romantic delusion. It would mean realizing this truth. You don't know who you are when no one is watching. So you keep performing. You perform love. You perform heartbreak. You perform recovery. But it's all just a stage. Because without the other, you're just a shell. An identity outsourced. A self held hostage by the gaze of another. Do you still believe this is about them? That they're toxic? That they're emotionally unavailable? That they're the problem? No. The problem is you. You wanted to belong more than you wanted to be free. You wanted to be desired more than you wanted to be whole. And now, you want to suffer. Because it's the only thing that makes you feel alive. Modern relationships are not built on love. They're built on escapism, ego, inflation, and codependency rituals disguised as connection. Everyone wants the power dynamic. They just lie about who's holding the whip. Lila eventually left. But not because she outgrew him. Because he found someone else. Someone even more compliant. And that broke her. Not because she lost him, but because she lost her role in the performance. Her purpose, her function, her illusion. She begged him to come back. Not out of love, but out of identity starvation. He said no. And in that silence, her entire emotional architecture collapsed. That's the cost of dependency. When they leave, they don't just take their presence. They take you with them. So here's the paradox. You chase the person who wounds you, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. Why? Because the pain feels familiar. Because the chaos gives you purpose. Because your psyche, warped by years of internal rejection, has learned to call suffering a form of intimacy. This is what Jung warned about. When you repress your darkness, it doesn't disappear. It chooses your lovers. You think you're falling in love, but really, you're falling into your own shadow, projected onto someone emotionally unavailable, indifferent, even cruel. They don't complete you. They expose how incomplete you already are. And so, you return. Again and again. To the person who ignores you. To the one who makes you beg. To the one who never loved you. And never needed to. Because needing them is all you have. And if you lose that, you lose yourself. But let's say you break free. Let's say you finally sever the tie. You'll still crave them. Not because they were good. Not because they were right. But because their absence leaves behind something even more unbearable than pain. Silence. Silence means you're alone with yourself. And most people, no matter how evolved they pretend to be, would rather die in someone else's orbit than face that void. This is the truth no one wants to admit. You are addicted to what destroys you, because without it, you would have to confront the hollowness inside. And here's the final cut. The person who hurts you most isn't your ex. It's the you who kept going back. The you who called dependence love. The you who sacrificed sovereignty for scraps of validation. There is no healing here. No breakthrough. Just this. A mirror. And a choice. But if you've made it this far, you already know the truth. You don't want to be healed. You want to need someone again. Still think love is innocent? Still think emotional dependence is a sign of depth? It's not. It's submission. Not the romantic kind. The psychological kind. The kind where you hand over your will and beg to be broken just to feel alive. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But let's be honest. You don't want consciousness. You want chaos with a pretty face. You want someone to devour you so you don't have to build yourself. You think heartbreak is romantic. It's pathetic. A self-inflicted wound you dress in poetry and call destiny. You are not a victim of love. You are a participant in your own destruction. And here's what you fear most. If you stop needing them, you'll have nothing left to hide behind. No pain to justify your emptiness. No one to blame for your erasure. Just you. And you're not ready for that. So go ahead. Call this cruel. Call it heartless. But deep down, you don't hate this. You're just afraid it's true.